The newly announced 30% tariffs on the European Union and Mexico are set to go into effect on August 1st, skipping the US. Mexico and Canada enter into a trade bypass agreement. Canada and Mexico get cozy with the trade plan to bypass the US. 1. Headline: 3 numbers, total shock, $120 billion, 30% tariffs, and 0 US customs checkpoints. Overnight, Canada's Mark Carney and Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum unveiled the Northern Corridor, a Pacific-to-Gulf rail and port blitz that sends every container around, not through American soil. Reuters clocks the detour at 9,200 kilometers of track, key for rerouting steel coils, EV batteries, and soy worth more than Detroit's entire 2020 for auto payroll. Customs analysts warned that Washington's fee pipeline, roughly $4 billion a year, could evaporate before Trump's new 30% tariffs even take effect on August 1st. That means fewer plates on U.S. assembly lines, pricier lumber at Home Depot, and a fresh hole in the federal budget the size of Nebraska's GDP. So, who really drives North America now, the White House, or to neighbors who just built an express lane around it? Stick with us because by the end of this video, you'll see how one shortcut could redraw every supply chain map on the continent and decide whether your next car rolls off a US lot at all. Tonight, the math behind the Northern Corridor reads like a blunt force audit. Earlier this month, President Trump vowed to impose a sweeping tariff on steel and auto parts, slated to hit in early August, a levy he said would stand apart from any sector-specific duties. Canada and Mexico answered with concrete, not rhetoric. They are building a 4,400-mile rail and port spine stretching from Prince Rupert to Mazatlan. The project is bankrolled by a $3.3 billion private consortium. At its Pacific terminus, an 8 million container superport will rise on Mexico's rim. Washington's own books spell it out. In the first 9 months of this fiscal year, Section 230 to steel tariffs have pulled in roughly $2.5 billion, a number that sounds big until you realize it's barely 0.04% of all the cash Washington collects. If even a slice of cross-border cargo hops the new line, that revenue evaporates while downstream prices climb. Detroit stamping presses would wait longer for the Canadian coil. Battery plants in Monterey could ship packs directly to Vancouver showrooms, skipping Michigan toll booths entirely. Every diverted boxcar widens the spread between U.S. sticker prices and Canadian and Mexican production costs. Exactly the margin the White House hoped to narrow. Meanwhile, the corridor's backers framed their project as a Panama Canal on rails, arguing that a single-day sailing cut plus tariff immunity can slice up to 7% off delivered costs for West Coast exporters. For Washington, that isn't just lost fees. It is lost leverage. The U.S. can audit paperwork. It cannot tariff a train that never crosses its frontier. Customs brokers call it regulatory seepage. Once a route exists, freight follows the path of least resistance until policy realigns or factories relocate, and factories are already restless. Last week's Auto Parts Association survey showed 41% of suppliers considering partial moves to Canada or Mexico if duty relief remains uncertain through Q4. Added up, and the Northern Corridor is less a bypass than a pressure gauge. The higher the tariff, the faster the cargo diverts, and the louder Midwestern voters will feel the hiss. Stay tuned. The first locomotive rolls before the tariff clock even starts, and its whistle may echo all the way to Capitol Hill. Canada and Mexico did not leap without laying track. Back in March 2020, Ottawa earmarked $2.3 billion Canadian dollars from its National Trade Corridors Fund to overhaul the Pacific Gateway. Prince Rupert got first dibs. New docks, fresh rail spurs, and bigger grain silos. For years on, the payoff is showing. The port now shifts about 23 million tons of cargo a year, and the number keeps climbing. Crews are pouring another $2.5 billion Canadian into multi-terminal upgrades this summer. That money locks in double-stack rail speeds that shoot Asian imports through Saskatchewan overnight and drop them on Chicago's doorstep a full day faster than they used to reach Seattle. Mexico is keeping pace. Last December, President Claudia Sheinbaum greenlit a $1.6 billion push to beef up 6 major ports: Veracruz, Altamira, Manzanillo, and 3 more. And to finish the toll-free Sonora-Durango superhighway, the public pitch is more capacity. The private game is tariff immunity. Manzanillo leads the charge. A Reuters tour in late April saw dredgers carving a deeper basin and crews pouring dock slabs built to churn out 10 million containers a year, double last year's load. Navy engineers boast the concrete will cure before Trump's August tariff hammer. Even swings add up the numbers, and you see why the quarter rattles Washington. Prince Rupert already moves the weight of 250,000 fully loaded rail cars a year. Montano is set to overtake Los Angeles in box traffic. A clean ribbon of rail and asphalt now links them. No U.S. customs stamp is required for governments ready to collect their payback. For D.C., every mile of that ribbon acts like a pressure valve. The higher the tariffs climb, the more freight leaks to the flanks, starving Midwestern mills and leaving border warehouses half-lit, and those trains run on departure boards, not on political calendars. The first double stack leaves Prince Rupert at 6:40 tomorrow, hours before Congress even gavels in. The numbers that feed Washington's balance sheet are already tilting. According to the Office of the United States Trade Representative, America's two-way goods trade with Canada reached $760.1 billion in 2024, while flows with Mexico hit an even larger $839.9 billion the same year. Together, those lanes supplied roughly one-third of every import dollar the U.S. spent last year. Now picture 10% of that current turning onto the northern corridor instead of rolling through Buffalo rail yards or Laredo's truck gates. That single detour would reroute about $160 billion in cargo, erasing the customs declarations, merchandise processing fees, and harbor taxes that normally pad the federal ledger. Customs and Border Protection's own trade dashboard shows why the Treasury would notice the drain. In fiscal 2023, CBP collected $92.3 billion in duties, taxes, and fees. Money that ranks second only to IRS receipts in federal cash flow. Strip out even a modest slice of cross-border steel, EV batteries, and wheat, and the loss grows loud enough to echo in budget hearings. Yet, the pinch will hit factories first. A diverted chain means Midwest automakers bidding higher for Canadian coil because half the supply now heads south toward Mazatlan docks. It means Gulf Coast chemical plants paying extra freight to pull Mexican soda ash back through Houston instead of accepting the tariff-free rail hop to Vancouver. For consumers, the math lands at the checkout line. Trim 1 to 2% from U.S. port volume, and retailers warn of a 4-cent jump per dollar of imported finished goods, a figure the National Retail Federation floated to Senate staff in May. All this before a single Trump-era 30% surcharge appears on CBP's digital ledger August 1st. In other words, the Northern Corridor is not merely a lane change. It is a leverage swap that shifts fee power from Washington to two neighbors who just proved they can redraw the map without asking for a stamp. Washington's fee machine is about to meet a ledger it can't stamp. Back on March 5th at a COAC meeting, U.S. Customs advisors backed a North America single window. The new system lets Canada and Mexico swap customs data without sending a single byte through U.S. servers. The recommendation explicitly backs a blockchain backbone, so every certificate of origin travels once, is validated twice, and never touches a CBP screen. That tweak deletes an entire U.S. revenue stream. Under the latest inflation update, CBP charges importers a minimum $32.71 merchandise processing fee per commercial entry. During fiscal 2024, the agency logged 38.44 million entries. So those nickels and dimes grossed roughly $1.6 billion. But the moment shippers file through the Canadian-Mexican ledger, every one of those entries becomes a foreign-to-foreign transfer. And CBP's fee line reads 0. Speed is the other gut punch. A UN trade study shows that countries rolling out electronic single windows have cut clearance times from 3 to 5 days down to 24 hours. North America's pilot goals may look modest, but they still hit U.S. ports hard. Carriers on the rail stretch say they can shave 4 to 5 hours off every shipment. That beats a jammed Laredo crossing by a full shift, and it could snatch the premium lane that high-value cargo normally pays U.S. tolls to use. Customs officials have already felt the burn. In CBP's NAFTA-CAFTA blockchain pilot, officers reported almost instantaneous communications with traders. They also saw duplicate data entries disappear. That paperwork delay is exactly what U.S. border towns cash in on today. Stack those pieces together and the math is brutal. One distributed ledger wipes out a $1 billion fee, slashes dwell time enough to reroute premium freight, and leaves Washington pleading with algorithms it doesn't host. The Northern Corridor just found its secret fuel, software that ghosts. The U.S. border before the first boxcar even rolls past the Rio Grande, factory floors are already feeling the burn, something the blockchain charts only whispered about. Back on April 14, 2025, GM slammed the brakes on its Bright Drop electric van line in Ingersoll, Ontario. They sent 1,200 workers home the spot and warned at least 500 of those jobs could be on ice until after October, while the plant retools for a 2026 battery upgrade. Take one GM badge off the line and, like dominoes, 7 more jobs vanish from steel welders to lunch truck cooks. All told, those 83,860 factory seats prop up another 27,420 supply chain gigs and 291,280 Main Street paychecks. That's 500,000 livelihoods riding on every shift whistle. Put it bluntly, lose 1,000 assembly jobs and more than 7,000 Midwestern paychecks go with them. Zoom out and the numbers get heavier. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation says 10.1 million Americans, about 5% of all private sector jobs, depend on the auto world. Every fresh hire on the line sparks 9 more jobs in parts plants, trucking, and beyond. So if the Northern Corridor pulls even a sliver of EV battery modules out of Michigan and into Quebec, the bleeding only speeds up. The unions see it coming. On May 14th, the Longshore Union called Trump's tariffs an economic war on working folks after cargo through LA and Long Beach plunged 30% in a single month. Dock workers worrying that once freight starts landing in Prince Rupert or Mazatlan, it may never cruise back and their bargaining power sinks with it. Auto leaders are sounding the same siren. UAW locals say every canceled production run chips away at the supplier base that keeps Detroit breathing. Capitol Hill aides are scribbling numbers on napkins. Bright Drop's timeout is just one plant. Yet car multipliers show it could put nearly 9,000 US and Canadian jobs on the line once you count the ripple. Now multiply that by the corridor's plan to reroute hundreds of thousands of vehicles. And the Midwest isn't wrestling with campaign slogans anymore. It's staring at a fiscal time bomb. So the question isn't whether tariffs shake up boardrooms. It's whether Washington steps in before the real dominoes, steel mills, stamping presses, even the roadside diner fall for good. Stop the presses. A $120 billion steel and auto artery just detoured around Washington's toll booth. Mexico has jumped aboard Canada's Northern Corridor, turning one rail ribbon into a continental escape hatch. This isn't a shortcut, it's a stress test of the White House's 30% tariff wall. Hold that line and Detroit could soon be tightening bolts with empty hands while customs booths count fewer trucks. Blink first with a last-minute tariff for quota truce. And yes, the bleeding may slow, but the new rule will be crystal clear. Whoever builds the infrastructure writes the playbook. So here's the cliffhanger. Our next episode depends on whether Washington swallows its pride or do Ottawa and Mexico wave the first freight train past the border guards. Drop your prediction below because the comment section may script tomorrow's headlines.